Charles Bronfman likes everything to be on time, so by sort of quietening things down, we'll get with the program. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Stephen Bronfman, and on behalf of the founders of the Charles Bronfman Prize, my wife Claudine, my sister Ellen, brother-in-law Andrew, I'd like you all to welcome you all to this prize event. Now, tonight we're going to reflect on the word welcome and celebrate its very spirit. Now, it's a Jewish event, and in good Yiddish schmaltz, I tried to contact actor Joel Grey of Cabaret, and I would have liked him to come out in full regalia with his cane and everything going, "Welcome, bienvenue, welcome." But Joel was previously engaged. So, you'll hear more about the inspired work of tonight's honoree, David LaBelle, and his work that is rooted in the name of their organization, Welcoming America. But for Ellen and me, and our entire family, to welcome others is something modeled by our parents for as long as I can remember, always having open doors and open hearts. The ultimate prophet's Elijah. Put these back on. Our family also shares the joy of welcoming these 14 inspiring laureates into the Charles Bronfman Prize family. And in the spirit of welcoming, I'd like to acknowledge some honored guests we have with us this evening. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, and the Consul General of Canada, Phyllis Yaffe. I'd also like to welcome our panel of judges, the Honorable Stuart Eisenstadt from Washington, who's just penned a wonderful book on Jimmy Carter, Professor Amitai Ziv from Israel, a new grandfather, Mazel Tov, our emeritus judge and the Honorable James Wolfenson, formerly of the World Bank, Justice Rosalie Silberman-Abella of the Supreme Court of Canada, who unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight, and the Honorable Dan Meridor, who will be speaking on behalf of our judges this evening. Now, Dan's been with us since the inception of the prize, minus the few years he had to recuse himself in his tenure as Deputy Prime Minister of the State of Israel. And whether he's leading insightful discussions on foreign policy as President of the Israeli Council on Foreign Relations, or advocating for the philanthropic support of some of the Jewish world's most important institutions, we all greatly value his continued commitment to everything the Charles Bronfman Prize stands for. So please welcome the Honorable Dan Meridor.
Charles and the Bronfman family, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to speak for the judges of the prize who decided who the recipient is for the year 2017. And I want to share with you briefly the reasons for our choice when we chose the founder and executive director of Welcoming America, David LaBelle. You know, in our role as just the judges, there's one benefit. In the world of today, what usually hits the headlines is the negative, the aggressive. You don't see the nice side of life. When we read the applications, the nominations of so many people who come to us, we do see the bright side of life. We see wonderful people with inspiring projects and endeavors, and it makes us really feel good, but it makes our choice quite hard because all of them, or most of them, are deserving and very good. This time, it was not very tough choice. We had it very clear that among those remarkable candidates, David LaBelle stands out, and we chose him to be the winner of the prize, the Charles Bronfman Prize for 2017. Why is that? You know, in recent years, the world faces a very serious challenge of immigration, legal and illegal. You have immigrants, you have refugees, asylum seekers. People run away from troubled countries, sometimes from danger of death or persecution. Some of them try to save themselves, their lives. Some of them try to prepare a better future for their children. It is up to states to decide what the immigration policy is, but unfortunately and shamefully in many countries, including societies of exemplary democracy, without mentioning names, this wave of immigrants awakens the dark spirit of xenophobia and racism. Although I think it is the primary role of leadership to educate people, to lead them in the right direction, and again, shamefully in some cases, rather than doing that, some people ride these waves, ugly waves, to gain public support and get elected or stay in power. Most of the people look at the newcomers to their countries as a problem. Some try to solve it, some cynically exploit it. David Lubell, our prize recipient, sees this not as a problem. He sees this as an opportunity. This simple yet revolutionary approach guided him to create welcoming communities for immigrants and refugees all over the United States, and now even outside the United States in other parts of the world. We've seen Welcoming America, we read about it, we researched it. It shows how communities who welcome immigrants and refugees, working with governments and with non-profit organizations, can benefit, not only solve problems, can benefit from the newcomers for their communities, for the advancement of good and prosperity for all involved. We speak here at the Bronfman Prize of Jewish values that have global impact. Our Jewish values tell us something, teach us something about how you treat the stranger. Precisely because sometimes human instinct does not lead some people in the right direction, the Bible, the Torah, orders us in Hebrew, "V'ahavtem et hager ki gerim haytem be'eretz Mitzrayim." Love the stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And it's a very unique commandment to love somebody. It's an order to love. It's not only what another verse says, "Lo tonu et hager ve'lo tilchatzenu." Don't wrong the stranger, don't oppress him. You need to love him. That strong and that important this commandment is. Now as Jews, we have been wandering in many parts of our history. Since Abraham and Jacob left the land of Canaan, the land of what you call today Palestine, to Egypt, because, as they said, "Vayhi ra'av ba'aretz," there was famine in the land. They went to look for food somewhere. And then after we were exiled from our land 2,000 years ago, for millennia, many of us have been immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, along generations and centuries. And then we, of course, demanded from others to treat us humanely, not to discriminate against us. And I can proudly say that Jews have been leading many human rights movements and organizations all around the world, including this country, fighting for minorities, for immigrants, for refugees. Can I say now, as an Israeli, now that we have our Jewish state of Israel, we should live up to our Jewish values, treating immigrants. And I can say that so should the United States of America, a state built on immigration. David Lubell sets an extraordinary example of leadership, which is sometimes missing in countries that I mentioned, based on Jewish values in his Welcoming America organization. We found him most deserving of this Charles Bronfman Prize for the year 2017.
adjust that. Thank you, Dan. That was great. Thank you for everything you do for the prize. We are so grateful. I'm Ellen Bronfman Hauptman, and like many of us, I've moved and I've been an immigrant, and I have actually had good experiences, but many have not, which makes the work of Welcome America so vital. I'd like to introduce you all to two people who will share their on-the-ground perspectives of this impactful work. They both represent the best of what a community looks like when we move beyond politics, as Dan was just mentioning, and connect on a human level, because this isn't just about immigration, it's about integration and building communities. And when I spoke with David recently, he said it's about empathy, and I think that's so important. So tonight, I hope you all come away with an understanding of what's needed, both generosity of spirit and a practical understanding of how new Americans help communities and their economies thrive. First, you'll hear from Kassar Abdullah, who was a co-founder with David in Welcoming Tennessee, where the model for Welcoming America was actually created. Kassar is a native of Kurdistan. She's an organizer, mediator, and educator whose ability to make positive change on immigrants' rights has been recognized locally, nationally, as well as internationally. And then after she speaks, we'll hear from Dr. Mara Kimmel from Anchorage, Alaska, who partnered with David a few years ago to prepare Anchorage as a receiving community. Dr. Kimmel is someone who lives out the values of social justice, dedicating her entire career to working with indigenous and immigrant communities in Alaska. So I'd like to welcome Kassar to the stage. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I remember yesterday as I hopped off the airplane in New York, I started to recall the last time David Lobel and I traveled to New York City. I remember I was fresh out of college, and he tasked me with, could you please put together our trip to New York City for some of our welcoming work? So I'm like, yeah, sure, I got this. Being a woman in the South, I had never came to New York City, so I thought I found the best hotel deal, and I booked it. Apparently, I booked a hotel that had a whole lot of peak rooms, not knowing exactly what those rooms meant. And so David Lobel came up to me and said, Kassar, you got us a peak room? I mean, where are we at? And I said, I thought I got a good deal. David being fiscally very conservative at that time. We're in the beginning stages of welcoming work. Every penny counts. That to say that immediately David Lobel, I saw the leadership within him. He immediately took charge and made sure that we not only had a safe but an adequate space to rest. His leadership style, I noticed how he was humble and cared about everyone around him. It just gave me that type of energy and that hope. That to say, this time I was actually very glad that Mama Jill was taking care of the logistics and not me. But I did walk away knowing from David that I should take hotel ratings very seriously in New York City. I would like to thank Charles Buffman Foundation and also David Lobel for the honor for me to be here. It is not a privilege that I'm here, but a responsibility. There are no words that can adequately describe the type of impact the welcoming work has on someone like me. My family, I was born in Kurdistan. At the age of 6, I fled because Saddam Hussein's genocidal attack against the Kurds. I lived my childhood life in the refugee camp. That was my elementary life. And so being settled to United States, I too, like a lot of new Americans, had dreamt that United States is an oasis. It's an utopia, the place that you can live a life that is full of liberty, happiness, that this is where dreams become a reality. And then we were settled in Fargo, North Dakota. I remember getting off the plane and even my mother looking around and kept saying, America, America. We were wondering if we got off the plane in the wrong part of the world. But they reassured us that you're actually in America and Fargo is part of America. We lived 4 years in Fargo, North Dakota. Life was extremely tough, aside from just the weather. There weren't many people who looked like me, sounded like me. Many people don't know that the biggest struggles and obstacles of refugee resettlement is that there's a huge gap between refugee resettlement and adjustment. And that's when the welcoming work comes in. So after 4 years of living in Fargo, North Dakota, my family decided to flee the snow and land in the heat of Nashville, Tennessee. I remember not being able to breathe and getting really upset, like, Mom, what am I gonna do here, be a country singer? What's there for me to do? Over the year, if you haven't been to Nashville, Tennessee, Nashville is beautiful. It's full of wonderful lakes and valleys. Its people are quite hospitable and very kind, despite how the politics look. One of the biggest obstacles that I ran into as a new American in Nashville, Tennessee, was no matter how hard someone like me attempted to be an American, right? So when you go through the immigration system, became a United States citizen, civically vote, graduated from the university, very active in my community, that there was a large sector of our community, the long-standing residents, who became an obstacle to successful integration. Many of that was because of the misinformation that they had about new American community. And so that created a gap between the new American and the long-standing Americans. And that gap became so broadened, it left room for a lot of hatred that you see and hear from Nashville, Tennessee. And so in 2006, a group of us concerned Tennesseans, under the leadership of David LaBelle, we came together and said, no, we are part of this community. We have to be in control of the narrative. We have to create a platform where these two communities can really come together. And it is not about perfection, but about connections. And that is how Welcoming Tennessee was birthed in Nashville, Tennessee. In the matter of few years, I personally saw the impact it had not only on me as a new American. Welcoming work gave a platform for me to engage in civil dialogue with these community members, to give them an opportunity to hear my narrative from me. In addition, it gave them the opportunity to face their fears and anxiety. It is only human of us to fear and question, why are the demographics around me changing? Why is it that my neighbor is dressed like that? Why do I hear Kurdish or Spanish be spoken in a grocery store? It is okay to ask the questions, but it is not okay for us to remain ignorant. And so Welcoming Tennessee began to address conversations, courageous conversations, not only about immigration and its broken pieces, but also that how we are all connected to this one big human family. On average, I was telling David, I still speak about 13 times a month. I visit Rotary clubs where 95% of the audience are elderly white men. I address public schools and community colleges. I remember 1 week after the president was elected and sworn in, where one of the administrators from that rural parts of the community gave me a call and said, we totally understand if you want to cancel. We do want to give you a heads up, it's Trumpville. And I respectfully said, no, I committed to come and to speak. And I'm sure people have RSVP'd to come and hear me to speak. Regardless of what is happening in DC, these are my community, my people. I want to give them an opportunity to learn. I want to provide myself as a source of knowledge for them, just the way I see them as a source of knowledge for me. I will never forget when I actually showed up to this community college, again, rural parts of Tennessee. These are the children who actually don't leave their communities. So they're there from elementary, middle school, they go to community college, they stay there, they're working, not much, they don't see people like me. One person from the audience got up and said, did you know I have never met a refugee up close and personal? You have debunked every myth that I had about refugees. And these are the type of people that Welcoming Tennessee is reaching. So yes, I cannot stand here and tell you adequately the level of impact the Welcoming initiatives have had, not just on me, but in my community in Tennessee and my adopted nation in the United States here. It has provided this opportunity for us to talk about some crucial conversations in a way that we know going around and responding to some of these misconceptions that we may have about the other, it's not going to take us very far. Many of you guys are probably aware that Tennessee is still not perfect. We still have our misfortunes. Just today I got texted that one of my friends who actually, an African-American person who lives in Bellevue, her house was vandalized with the N-word all over. Many of you may not know that 4 years ago, one of the local mosques was burned down to the ground with swastikas and the messages of hate. So these are still happening. But the work of Welcoming Tennessee have been able to move people that you think were unmovable. In the state of Tennessee, first time ever, our governor now just pushed for equitable education access to everyone, regardless of their immigration status. On the 26th of April, our state senators wrote a proclamation recognizing the Kurdish Americans and their contribution to Nashville, Tennessee. These are all happening because of the welcoming work. I can tell you one thing, Mr. Charles Buffman, that you and your family have made the right decision. I know David. He's a man who have been moved by his Jewish heritage of social justice, but he's a humble man who is willing to become an immigrant himself and travel to Germany and make sure that the welcoming work goes international. My only disappointment is that the Welcoming International did not start in Kurdistan. So maybe we can expand it there. I just want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story with you. And I'm excited to see the Welcoming International's impact on our world. Thank you.
Well, that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thanks to all of you, and particularly to the Bronfman family, for having me all the way from Anchorage, Alaska, to be able to represent the far north. I was so excited when I was asked to come say a few words about David, because besides honoring such an amazing man, I thought I'd have the chance to use words like mensch and yenta in the same talk, and in front of an audience who would know what I was talking about. But then I realized that I didn't know what I was talking about. I pulled out my copy of Leo Rosten's Joys of Yiddish just to make sure that the word yenta meant what I think it meant and what David means to me. I guess I'd watched Fiddler on the Roof a few too many times, and I thought that yenta was some matchmaker, somebody who pulled people together, who knits a community together, and as far as I could tell, there was no better word for David. Sorry. I learned. After all, David is somebody who creates community and creates connections. He's built a national network of welcoming cities, and that network is full of mensches just like David. But then Leo Rosten let me know that I'd been using the word yenta wrong all this time. So I went casting about the dictionary for a new word and a different way to describe David and the impact that Welcoming America's had. So how do you say magnifying glass in Yiddish? It just doesn't have the same effect. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that yes, David is definitely a connector and pulls communities together and weaves us into a stronger place to be. But David's work and his vision has brought into sharp focus what's been here all along, but that we couldn't see. That when we look through a welcoming lens, our city is better, our community is better, our country is better, and our world is better. When we see things for what they are, whole worlds open up. We see ourselves for who we are, and we see what's been here all along, but that we just didn't know. And in the case of Anchorage, my home in the north, when we looked through that magnifying glass, we saw that being welcoming is the story of the north. It's who we are. We're welcoming because we understand that being far away, tucked up there in the northern corner of the United States, we need each other, especially when times are tough and we face uncertain futures. As Alaskans, we know that what matters is our willingness to extend a hand when you need help getting your car started on a cold morning, or making sure that there's a pot of stew on for people who are hungry and passing by. We know that our safety and our survival depends on each other. And as Alaskans, we also know that what matters is our willingness to extend a hand, not what's on the other end of that hand, not the color or political persuasion or country of origin, but what counts is our promise to each other and to our state. Being welcoming is rooted in those traditions. Being welcoming defines our sense of justice, and it determines our power. David and Welcoming America has helped my city to magnify and understand this. He's helped us to see the tradition, the justice, and the power of being a welcoming community. The tradition of being welcoming is indigenous to Anchorage. My city sits on lands that have housed and fed and sustained the Dena'ina Athabascan people for 10,000 years. And they have in turn welcomed me, welcomed my family, and welcomed hundreds of thousands of others. We learned to be welcoming from the ancestors and from the keepers of those lands and traditions. The justice of being welcoming is in that continuity. It's now up to me and to us to ensure that the people who are seeking to make Anchorage a home, particularly people who are fleeing persecution and seeking safety, know that they belong and they matter. I was welcomed, and now I'm a welcomer. There's no room for bystanding in a welcoming city, especially in these days. That to me is a distinct point of my own Jewish pride, my ancestral lessons, that being welcomed makes me and makes us better welcomers. The power of being a welcoming city is also a value that we embrace. My 14-year-old son just got back from the March of the Living when he visited Poland and Israel just to see the impacts of the Holocaust. In a brief and intense 2 weeks, he witnessed the devastation of expulsion and the joy and relief and pride of finding a home. He saw what we know, that the power of being welcoming is the power inside all of us to create a better, more inclusive, equitable, and just world. And David and Welcoming America helps us to see that. And it's because of David that I get to share the story of Anchorage, Alaska, one of the most ethnically diverse cities in the country, a welcoming city on the northern edge of the country. And it's because of David that we're on the cutting edge of reclaiming what that means to be a welcoming city. That we're seeing who we are and who we've always been, that we are home no matter where we come from, and that is our tradition, our justice, and our power. So it's so fitting that he gets this award, the prize of being the Mensch of the Year. By sharing his vision, David has magnified into sharp focus this truth, that when we welcome the stranger and each other, we create a better world. We become the tradition, the justice, and the power of our ancestors. Thank you again, and congratulations.
Thank you, Kassar, and thanks, Mara. Mara, to continue in your Yiddish, I'll be coming to Anchorage this summer to do a little bit of heli skiing, and I'm looking for a warm welcome because I'll be on a bit of spilkus. So tonight we have the privilege of hearing a conversation with Fareed Zakaria and David Lubell. A prolific voice on foreign policy, it's an honor to have Fareed here with us tonight. In addition to hosting CNN's Fareed Zakaria GPS, Fareed is a contributing editor at The Atlantic and is a Washington Post columnist, where he has contributed smart, relevant, and insightful coverage on the role and contributions of immigrants. Thank you, Fareed. for so generously sharing your time with us here this evening. And of course, a warm CRB Prize welcome to the man of the evening, David Lubell.
I don't think I'll be nearly as good as Fareed and David, and I thank them very, very much. And Fareed, thank you so much for taking time from what we all know is a very, very heavy schedule to be with us this evening. And again, I welcome everybody, as has been done several times. I particularly would like to welcome a few people. First of all, my very dear friend, former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert, who was here for a conference. Ehud, thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it. And then there are other laureates who come. The thing is this, folks, once you're in this club or family of laureates, Jill Indyk will make sure that you cannot escape. You're here, and that's it. And so some of the laureates have come of their own will and volition to be with us today. And we start off with number one, Jay Feinberg, who was welcomed in 2004. Amitai Ziv in 2007, and Amitai was such a good recipient that he became a judge. So he's here in two levels, Amitai. Sasha Chanoff of Refuge Point, who was welcomed in 2010. Sasha, where are you? Eric Rosenthal, 2013. And Rebecca Heller, 2015. Thank you all for being here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to play a pretend game. I'd like you to pretend that you're about to be 70 years old, that your family has planned parties and receptions and so on. And just before your 70th birthday, you have two children, a boy and a girl, only they're now very grown up. And they come to you 2 days before your birthday and they say, we have a birthday present for you. And you say, well, that's very nice. I'm going to get a nice sweater or something, or maybe a tie. And, well, what's the present? Well, we're going to give a prize. Well, that's nice to give a prize. Yeah, but you see, this is going to be called in your name, and it's going to be for people under 50. And they kept on reading out all the prerequisites and the way this thing was going to be run, who was going to do what, with which, and to whom. And they said, and here it is. Well, what would you do? What would you do? What would you do when your two children gave you the most wonderful thing that a parent could ever long for? I don't know about you, but I cried. And every time I talk about it, I start tearing up. And I say that every year, and I hope to say it for another 20, because this has been so meaningful. I have met so many wonderful, wonderful people through this process, and it has been something that I cherish more than I can ever, ever say. So once again, Ellen, Stephen, Claudine, Andrew, thank you, thank you, thank you. However, it's not supposed to be about me and my children. It's supposed to be about, what's the name of the guy again? I forget. David, come back up here, please. And Shannon, would you please join him? Because this is, I always believe that nobody does things by themselves, that they have a partner. And Shannon and David are two wonderful partners. And it is my real privilege to present to you this 2017 Charles Bronfman Prize.
Trying not to drop it.
You're on.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, just take it, yeah.
Jill's been telling me about that prize for a couple of weeks, and I've been very scared I was going to drop it. So I'm really, really excited that Shannon's got it now. Thank you so much, Charles. I'm so deeply touched by you and deeply honored to receive this prize. My wife Shannon, who we all just saw, my beautiful wife Shannon and I were lucky enough to be welcomed by you and your beautiful wife Rita in your house in Florida a few months ago. And that's when I learned what you just told now, that this was the most meaningful gift that you ever received. And I believe one of the reasons why it meant so much to you was because it was a sign that your children had grown up to be people who embody Jewish values and live with honor and integrity. And that's the definition of the word mensch. Receiving this prize is also incredibly meaningful for me. Like your children, I have tried hard to live up to the values that my parents, hi Mom and Dad, have instilled in me. And as a father, I'm trying to pass those values on to our boys, Benedict and Isaac. Still, it's very rare as we stumble through life that we receive a clear sign that we're hitting the mark. Receiving this award is the clearest sign that I've ever received that I'm at least on the right track. If my bar mitzvah was the moment in which I started to become a man, I consider this my mensch mitzvah. The moment when I can say I'm at least on the path to becoming a mensch. So there are so many people that I want to thank tonight, so many more than I have time for. I want to start, though, by thanking all of you in the audience. Many of you have traveled from very far to be here, and so many have supported me and Welcoming America for a very long time. To everyone here tonight, thank you. And now, I want to thank those who played a role in selecting me for this honor. And first, just as Charles thanked these folks, I want to thank Ellen, Andrew, Stephen, and Claudine. Charles' amazing children and amazing in-laws. You're lucky to have amazing in-laws too, that's good. For making all of this possible and for continuing to be mensches in the world. I also want to thank the esteemed international judges. Thank you not just for choosing me for this prize, but for choosing the cause of welcoming immigrants and refugees at this critical time in history. We're unfortunately in a time when humanity's commitment to welcoming the stranger is under grave threat. Your choice at this moment sends an important signal that we're living up to our values as people whose scripture exhorts again and again to welcome the stranger. In the Torah, we're commanded no less than 36 times to warmly welcome the stranger in our midst. Welcoming is what being Jewish is all about. It's also what being human is all about. Your choice also shows we are heeding the lessons of our own history. Global xenophobia is rapidly on the march around the world. There are currently 250 million immigrants and refugees in our world, more than any other time in human history, and they're increasingly being blamed for a host of society's ills. This scapegoating of foreigners, which is paralleled by the growth of anti-Semitism, must be recognized and confronted. For as Jews, we know intimately where systematic othering can lead if left unchecked. In addition to the judges, I also want to thank Jill Collier-Indick, who we've heard people talk about tonight. Where's Jill? Hi, Jill. Jill is the executive director of the prize, and she has been so incredibly helpful, or has, as she would say, relentless in her support of me since I was selected, and has been appointed by past prize winners as the Den Mother. And of course, thank you to Kassar for your beautiful words, and Mara for yours, and as well as Fareed for helping tell the story of welcoming. I also want to thank all prior award winners for their support, but particularly Becca Heller and Sasha Chanoff, who I consider my siblings within this extended Bronfman family, and who have been my constant support and champions. Thank you. Next comes my thanks to the people who share this award with me. No person is an island, and these are the people who deserve so much of the credit for the work that's being recognized tonight. I want to start by thanking all of those who have welcomed me in the many chapters of my life. We're nothing without those welcomers who open the doors to worlds, both external and internal, that we didn't know that we could access. I especially want to thank my host family when I lived in Ibarra, Ecuador. That was back in 1998. The Lockheedines. The Lockheedines took me in as a member of their family when I arrived as a nervous English teacher straight out of college in 1998. They showed me the power of welcoming. They took me in as their own child. They made the experience a transformative one for me. And they inspired me to make this my life's calling. Next, I especially want to thank you, Shannon. Shannon, you've truly been my joint partner in the development of this movement. You've been my co-strategist, my shoulder to cry on, my unending support and anchor. And none of this would have been possible were it not for you. And you know that's true. Next, my parents, John and Martha, and my twin brother, Sam. And Barbara, his partner. Yes, that's right, I have an identical twin, so if any of you thought you saw me out there and I was dissing you, that was my brother. Mom and Dad, thank you for instilling in me the values that have kept me on this difficult but rewarding path. Through all the challenges and all the ups and downs, and for always encouraging me to reach for my dreams. And Sam, thanks for your endless support and humor, and for being my best friend. Next, to welcome America's staff and board. This award truly goes to you. You've worked tirelessly and humbly to make this idea a reality, and you have built something truly meaningful in the world. Everyone on the Welcoming America staff and board are incredible, but I do want to quickly single out 3 people who are here tonight. First, to Ellen Gallagher. Where's Ellen? Let's see. Hey. Ellen was the first staff person I hired at Welcoming America, and she helped build this organization into something we all can be proud of. Next, Mavash Hassan. All right, there she is. Our terrific board chair and a longtime supporter and advisor of the movement. And finally, last but not least, Rachel Parrish. Hi, Rachel. Who is now, as I move on to the international work, as I become the founding director of the Welcoming International Initiative, Rachel becomes executive director of Welcoming America. Rachel has really been my co-pilot for over 5 years as deputy and then managing director, and she's an amazing leader. We refer to ourselves as the Paul and John of welcoming. Rachel is herself the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, and there's no one else I know who more embodies the values of this organization and movement. Next, to our donors and volunteers. So many of you are in the audience. If you've given any of your treasure or time to Welcoming America, please know how grateful I am to you. I want to thank all of you individually, but in the limited time I have, I would be remiss if I didn't at least thank Unbound Philanthropy, our first major funder, Einhorn Charitable Trust, our essential partner, Rockefeller Foundation, Pershing Square Foundation, Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation, and the Rosenberg family. All of you are here tonight. Thank you so much for your visionary support. I also want to thank one of our newer funders, Open Society Foundations, for being the first major supporter for the Welcoming International Initiative that I'm now leading. It is so exciting that communities all over the world are beating down our doors to adapt the approach that we've developed in the United States. And I feel so strongly, especially now, that we must do all we can to meet that demand. I applaud OSF for recognizing this immense potential and providing us with the springboard that we need to spread this movement to all corners of the world. I also want to give thanks to a former funder and the most important champion and thought partner that this organization has ever had, Suzette Brooks Masters. Suzette was formerly with the J.M. Kaplan Fund and is currently a fellow with Welcoming America and was a member of my nominating team for this prize. Where are you, Suzette? Thank you. And thanks also to Anne-Marie Burgoyne of Emerson Collective for acting as my lead nominator, and to everyone who participated in my nomination. And finally, I want to thank all the and I'm done with the thank yous after this. And finally, I want to thank all the participants in the Welcoming Movement worldwide. That includes our many partner organizations, many who are here tonight. And it especially includes our members, the municipal government and civil society leaders who actually make welcoming happen on the local level. Through Kasar and Mara, you got a little taste of the incredible cohort of leaders who drive this movement. I'm so lucky that I have a job where I get to support passionate, dedicated welcomers like Kasar and Mara all across the country and the world. I believe it's the best job in the world. So now, as we close this evening, I would be remiss, and all of you who know me know this, I would be untrue to myself if I left you without a call to action. So I'm going to end with a call. As I've alluded to earlier, we cannot forget for a moment that the global fear of the stranger has reached epidemic levels in our world. The resulting punitive policies and climate are making life agonizing for millions of immigrants and refugees worldwide. Rapidly spreading fear of the other is also increasing societal polarization and fueling a surge in nationalism that threatens our values and our very democracies. We cannot sit on the sidelines at this crucial moment in history. So here are 3 things all of you can do to promote welcoming in your own communities, because in the end, the future of how humanity welcomes will be determined by communities. First, make a stranger feel welcome in your home and in your community. As the widely respected late Rabbi Arnold Jacob Wolf said, Jews are commanded to open their homes to visitors, particularly the poor and learned. Jews are not to convert their homes into fortresses, protecting the nuclear family from invasion, but to sensitize their children to other people by inviting visitors regularly into their homes. The house is not to be a refuge, but a bridge. So how can I do this in practice, you ask? How can I make my community and my home a bridge? To start, you can volunteer for a local immigrant and refugee serving organization, just like my mom does in Philadelphia. Or invite a newcomer to your home for dinner. In time, you can take this welcome to the neighborhood level and host a dialogue between longtime residents and immigrants in your community. We have resources on our website, which is welcomingamerica.org, that can help you to get started in that work. Okay, 2 more. Second, support a formal welcoming effort in your community. You can go to the website to see if such an effort is already underway. If one does not exist, don't wait, start one. The ultimate goal should be to get your community officially certified as welcoming by Welcoming America. Certification ensures that the policies and culture of your community are truly inclusive to immigrants and everyone. Finally, speak out in support of immigrants and refugees in your place of worship or social media, wherever you can. And support leaders and policies working to build bridges across difference and make it more likely everyone in your community will have a chance to reach their full potential. By taking any of these steps, you'll become part of the global welcoming movement, a rapidly expanding, bottom-up phenomenon that's solving one of humanity's greatest challenges, one community at a time. And with that, thank you, good night, and good welcoming.
Okay, I had to bring that down. So I had a few remarks to make in closing, most of which have been said. And Dad, to follow you, I might start to cry, so I might have to change what I was going to say. But David, we're so proud of everything you've done. It's just so humbling, and just so proud of everything that all of our prize recipients have done. And this prize, as Dad has said, has really turned out to be more than what we ever had expected. We just had this clever idea. Our parents inspired us when Stephen and I were kids, and you know, this is just how you brought us up. So it's really on to you. And it's just been an honor to be involved with this. And so, Dad, thank you. I also want to take a moment, like David did, to thank Jill Collier-Indick, who's really, to be honest, I think that she is a humanitarian in her own right, because she deals with all these people and these issues on a day-to-day basis. And she is legitimately the #1 fan and a true champion for everyone involved. We also wanted to thank everyone who helps read these nominations. That they are so fantastic. We have so many amazing people who submit applications for this prize, and it's a huge commitment of concentration and time. And hopefully for those who are our readers, we hope it's an enriching experience as well. And of course, as we've done before, thanks again to our judges who have just been tremendous to work with. And just like David gave a call to action a minute ago, we also want you to check our website, charlesbronfmanprize.com, for the next year's nominations, which will start in the fall, and help us continue this legacy that we've started. And in closing, it's only fitting to end how we started, with a welcome. So if you would all join us for the reception so we can welcome David properly to the Charles Bronfman Prize family.
And also, a really big, warm prize welcome and thank you to Ellen, because along with Jill, it's Ellen that's taken this endeavor on and welcomes everyone and does such a phenomenal job. So I thank you, sweets. Love you tons. Love you, Pops. Thank you all.
Thank you.